Everybody, this is Miss Chris and we're going to talk about how to draw with pastels. Now, what is a pastel? Pastel is chalk, and I'm going to show you here on my board what you will have in your kit. You're going to have a variety of colors and different shapes of pastel. The first one is a round shape, and I put it down here and you can see it has a little powder which I blow away. And here's another round shape, which is green. So I put them both together, and then I can blend them with my finger, and they blend out, and you got some yellow and light green and dark green. That's one. Now we have another kind of pastel, which is soft, like the other two. It's kind of like a rectangle and has little square edge, and you can have little corners to do fine work. So I put that down, it spreads just like the round. Here's another one. And then when I put those two down and blend them together, they blend very nicely too. So that's the two main pastels, either round or kind of a square. But we do have other pastels, which you will not see in your kit, but I want to tell you about them. They are in the form of a pencil, but it is still soft chalk. So if I put it down, you'll see it looks just like the other two, and here's another soft pastel. And together, when I put those down and put my finger on it, they will also blend nicely together. So we have still another kind of pastel pencil, but this is very different. This has wax in it. It's called Prism. And when I start out my line, I can feel it's kind of slippery because that's the wax in it. And here's a pink wax one. And when you put those together and try and blend them, they don't blend very well. So I don't use the Prism very often, only maybe for a little detail of something where I don't have to blend, or it has a nice hard point, I can put my initials on it. But normally we're going to use either the round or the soft pastel. So what do you have to do next? You have to get some kind of paper to put the chalk on. And Pastel does have its own paper, and it's called pastel paper. And in it, of course, they can be in different colors and different shapes. In your box, you will have a smaller version of pastel paper. I have it cut up a little bit so it's not too big. And when you look at the paper, one side looks pretty smooth, but the other side, you can see these tiny little pockets in it. And that's because the color of the chalk itself, the dust, will get down in these pockets, and when you blend, it stays in there. So that's a good thing. So that's what we want to use when we do pastels. So the next thing I'm going to tell you is there's something else in your box, which is called mat board. It's a little harder than the paper, and this can also be used for pastels. And we might use that at a different time. But now let's go on and see exactly what supplies you need out of your kit. Okay, I have the kit before me that you should have received. So let's look at the supplies that you will need for the pastel. Okay, I'm opening it up and we see what we have in this box. First of all, there is a little plastic box that has your different colors in it. You should have 7 or 8 various colors. Some of them may be round, some of them may be square, but they're all different colors, and this is what we're going to use to do our different demonstrations. Okay, so you have a package of chalk. Next I see this is sandpaper, and I'll tell you when we do the demonstration what we're going to use the sandpaper for. So the next thing we have is paper. Now I have a lot of paper, but in the very back you should find some of the pastel paper I was talking about. It's probably a light yellow or white color. There is blue too, but today we're going to use the light color. And on one side it's a little smoother than the other. The other side has the pockets in it. So you'll have your paper. The next thing you will see is I called a Stubbie. And what it is, it's made of rolled paper. And this is used, the point is used to get into small, tiny spaces to blend. Remember, all pastels are about blending. So that's the tools we have. And the one of the most important things, I think, is your eraser. And it looks like a square gray mass. It's very pliable. You can squeeze it, use it like that. And it is called a kneaded eraser. Now, the kneaded eraser, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to cut the original one, but I cut one off in a little piece. You don't want to use the whole thing at once. It's too wasteful. So you'll have one little piece, and with this you can take off the cellophane on top of it. And it's called kneaded because you can knead it or move it around with your hands. And the good part about this is not only does it erase the pastel, but you can fold it over and clean it, and then you have another clean spot to erase again. And you can use this over and over again for a while. So it's a very good thing to have. The other thing that I want you to notice is a pencil. You will need one of the pencils, and the pencil, of course, is for drawing, and we're going to talk about that in the next segment. Also, you have some little types of flowers. You may have flowers, tulips flower. Some of you may have a little worm. These are going to be used. We're going to trace around this image, and then we're going to do the pastel inside it. So these are the things that you need right now for the pastel that we're going to do. So you're going to see over here, we got the chalk, we got the sandpaper, we have the little stubby, we have some materials that we're going to use to actually draw on some different shapes. We have the eraser, and finally we have the paper. So this is the supplies that you will need to do the pastel. Next, we're going to talk about transferring the image. So I have a little image of a butterfly before me. First of all, you can trace it yourself by just looking at it. You're not really tracing it. You're drawing it very lightly, and you're trying to emulate what's going on here. And I'm doing a rather quick job of it, but I just wanted to show you if you took your time, you could probably do this. And you have your butterfly, and you have two antennas up here and the little center coming down here. And you put in your circles on all sides. So you could do it that way. But probably a more accurate way is to trace it with a pencil. So you have to hold it down very carefully so it doesn't move, and you trace all around it. And as we're doing that, you can see I'm holding it on, or else you can tape it on, but make sure it doesn't move or you won't have it in the right way. So I'm just going around here rather quickly, but remember, keep it fairly light because chalk has to go over this. So then you have the outline of the butterfly, but you don't have the inside of it. So you have to look at it and put your circles in and put the body of the butterfly in like that. So that's another way of doing it. Third, you can take the image, if it's kind of a stiff cardboard and it's good on the other side, you can take your pencil, hold it on its side as you can see, and you really press very hard, and I've already blackened in all of it to save time, but you can see how I'm doing this. Pencil is made of lead, and lead is graphite, and it will stick to something if you press hard enough, and it's just like tracing paper. So I put it on its side here. And then again, let's put it over here where I have a little more room. Again, you trace it around lightly with your pencil. Put your little markers in. Only this time I'm going to try and see if there's enough graphite on that to put it in. If not, you'll have to put that in. Go all around your wing. Again, either I can sometimes secure it with tape, or I can put a clip on it to keep it all steady, because it is a little hard to keep it going like this. but I'm just doing it to demonstrate what we have. So then I'm going to go very hard on the circles because there should be some impression underneath. Let's see if we have that. Let's see what we have. Well, you might not be able to see it, but I can see the circles very lightly. So that gives me a guideline to put this on here. And then I put my little antenna up there, and I put the body of the butterfly like that. So that's the third way. There is a fourth way. It depends what you're doing. If your paper is thin enough that you can see through, you can go to your window, put the image up. Now this paper isn't as good. Maybe on the dark side I can do it. Let's see. I'm not quite up to a window. But if you can go up to a window and you can see the shape underneath, you can trace it that way too. So those are 4 techniques to put the image onto a piece of paper. Now we've come to the demonstration phase. We're actually going to do a picture of a scene with a sky, the mountains, and this is water with a reflection of the sunset on the water. So what we need to do is get out your box of chalk, open the box and put the chalk out, and you can see you have different colors. Your colors may not be the same as mine, but close enough. We're just demonstrating today to see what you can do with pastels. So we have that. Then we also need some of this sandpaper. Keep that handy. If you need an eraser, we have an eraser. And we really need a paper towel to wipe your hands, a dry paper towel, not wet, because that would ruin your pastel. But pastels are very messy and you're going to need to wipe off your hands when you change colors. Okay, so now we have our pastel paper and we're going to look at the drawing and we're going to freehand this. So we have the sky and then we have mountains. So we're going to put in a mountain here lightly with your pencil, and it doesn't have to be exactly right, just kind of bumps and glazes, and that's the mountain. Then get a piece of paper, or if you have a ruler, because next you have to establish your water line, the land line. So we're going to take that with our pencil and very lightly, we're going to put a line across, all the way across, okay? Now, if you notice the water has some zigzaggy, the sun comes over. So just to remind me when we do this, I'm just putting some very light zigzaggy lines in, right through the middle. And then if you go up and look at the clouds, you can see there's some red at the very top, yellow, and then red again. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to put in a line, very faint line at the top for the orange color. And then there's yellow in here, and then another big orange cloud comes in here, so I'm going to put that in too. Okay, so now we're ready to go. So first of all, we're going to always start at the top because you don't want to keep your hands crossing over the chalk that's already made. So we'll start at the top, and I'm going to grab my orange color. If you have it anywhere near orange, and at the very top you put your line all the way across, and then you take your finger, I'm going to pull the paper down a little bit now so you can see what I'm doing up close. So I'm blending it with my finger. We use a lot of fingers. Sometimes you can use your little stubby, that's another thing you might have, if you really need to blend, but for this particular thing, we can use our fingers. Then the next line is going to be yellow in here. So I'm going to grab my yellow. Now this is a hard brick rectangular with a little square edge. And because it's hard, I might do this. I might take my sandpaper. This is where the sandpaper comes in. And you just lightly scratch the surface, and that gives you a lot of yellow. So then I'll put that down, Again, take another finger and go across and put your yellow in. Another yellow line. Then you can kind of blend some of that orange in with it because it's a lot of blending involved in pastels, and that makes it look more real. Okay, you need to touch up a little more red. I'm sorry, a little more yellow. Just a little more yellow in here. Again, make that a little deeper. And I'm streaking some of the orange from my finger in there. And we're ready to do the next, which is going to be the darker color. You may have a red or a deep color orange. So you're going to put that on here next. That's your next line. And that comes all the way across down in here somewhere. It doesn't have to be exact. We're just doing this to show the effects of blending. So I'm going to take a paper towel now and wipe off some of this chalk. And then I'm going to blend it with my finger. And I remember that the mountain has the yellow. So after I get this deep red in here, and again I can go up a little bit into the yellow color, then I'm going to get the yellow again, and you can either use the sandpaper like we did before, get some of the yellow, or you can also, in these tight spots, you can just put the yellow in here, down in here. Then take your hand, your little finger, whichever finger you're using for yellow, and go across it, and go up a little bit in the other. I blow off the excess dust. And now I want to make it, you can see that's a little streakier in here. So I'm going to take this red back again, and I'm going to streak it in here like that. Mix a little bit of it in here, and then smooth it out again. Okay? And there you have your sky. Pretty sunset. So the next thing we're going to do is grab a dark color. You might have a dark purple, or I think mine is a brown. And we have to outline the mountain. So I take the corner of my chalk and I draw my line to outline the mountain, which I had done in pencil. Then I have to go along the side here because there's a straight line that comes across. As you can see, all the way across. And then you fill it in. Sometimes I put little circles, sometimes I put straight lines, but whatever you do, you're filling in that whole white area as the mountain. Excuse me. And then you essentially have your mountain. Sometimes I put in a little of the purple to give it a little more definition of the mountain. All right, now we're set for the water. So we're going to come up here a little bit higher so you can see what I'm doing next. I'm going to take my purple because the water looks like it's purple here. If you don't have purple but you have blue, use blue. And I'm going to go down. It's all on the side. I'm zigzagging because remember the sunlight comes through the water. Now I have this on a hard board underneath me. And if you have a board that has a clip, that's even better because mine's moving a little bit and it shouldn't be moving around. Now you're going to put your purple all the way across the very top because that's the top of the water under the mountain. And the same thing on this side, zigzag it on like this. And fill it in all in here with purple. Again, I'm going to take my hands and get the other colors off. And use my fingers again, and you're going to go in and smooth it out. Okay? And do the same thing across the top here and on the other side. Cover that all with purple. So the only thing you have left to do now is put the sunlight in here. All of this is sunlight. So I'm going to start with my yellow first, do the lightest color first, and just zigzag it around like this, getting it down into some of the purple. And again, wiping my hands a little bit and going down and smoothing that out, okay? Next, take your orange. Here's my orange. I'm gonna go in here with this, streaking it in, covering anything that's white on that paper. You don't need any white showing. You should have nothing but color. And again, I see a little of the dark red kind of at the bottom here and in here and wherever you want. Just a light line, you're streaking it. And you pretty much have your picture. You can darken the water a little bit if you want. Some of this shading is really dark. I can add my brown again to it, put a little brown in here, but again, you're mixing it. And on the other side, you can do the same thing. Get it a little deeper and a little more brown in here. But basically, this is your portrait of sunset. And you can see the sky, the mountains, and then you got the water, and the sunset is, colors are coming through. Last thing you do is take a darker color, because this is pretty intense, and put your initials. You should always put your initials on your artwork, usually in the right-hand corner, somewhere in that area, because you're going to frame it and you want it up a little bit higher. So thank you, and that's our sunset over the water.